Yeah.
6. Well, hey, everybody. My name is Jared Malat. I'm here with my good friend, Mateo Calise, and this is The Coltist, Season 2, Episode 6. And here we are, brother, 2 weeks to the day from the 2023 NFL Draft, in which the Colts still have the fourth pick. Um, as we were kind of talking about right before this in our little Discord chat at Stampede Blue, it seems like a team drafted in the top four is going after a different prospect, like multiple times a day or every time a day, few hours of every day. Largely, most of this stuff is all smoke and mirrors, right?
Yeah.
There's not
Yeah,
a
we were just talking. Yeah, you shouldn't believe anything you are seeing right now about any
no.
team. Houston perhaps not taking any of the quarterbacks and then going with Will Anderson as the number two spot. Like, you should not believe that. You should not believe anything you see. Like, why would a team, tip their strategy just 2 weeks before the draft? It makes no sense. It makes perfect sense for them to keep it close to the best and them not to say anything. So
Mhm.
yeah, just don't believe anything you read. Like, expect the unexpected, perhaps. Just no one knows shit about what's going to happen in the next 2 weeks.
Mhm.
I mean, it's basically an educated guessing game. Mock drafts are an educated guessing game where you're like, I see this thing happen, but no one knows for sure.
No, no, and
Like,
there's really not. Here's what's really not going to happen, and keep I keep seeing mock draft. The first four picks are not going to be quarterbacks. The probability of that happening is zero. And I'm just throwing it out there. Like someone in the first three picks is picking a defensive player. Why? Because multiple people who evaluate talent have said the best player in this class is a defensive lineman. So
yeah,
you can mark me down as the conspiracy theorist that says, well, I think that the first two picks are roped into taking a quarterback given their
yeah,
situation. I don't know who those people are going to be. I have an idea it's Stroud Young or Anthony Richardson. And from what I believe, based on my film watch, my view of him in the combine, and all the little idiosyncrasies that he's popped out with, like eating a nanner hole, right? The dude ate a banana hole on IG, right?
yeah.
Um, I that actually moves him down on my draft board. Like his transformation, where you see him go from like a pretty milky white boy to yoked, that should have happened before the season, right?
Yeah.
Because his tape from this past year not good. It really that did not look like an
No,
NFL
it's
ready
atrocious.
quarterback.
Yeah, it's
In
pick
a
any game,
program
pick
that has
any game from
struggled
the
too
last
and is
year,
not
and
known for putting NFL quarterbacks into the NFL, Will
yeah,
Levis, right? So the problem now is that there's a camp that's getting nervous, and that was the we should have traded up camp. And so there's a lot of Colts fans right now that are thinking like, man, we're not going to get one of the good guys. Nope, you're still going to get one of the good guys. And here's why. Arizona was really bad on defense. They picked third.
yeah,
I think that like a betting man says that has to be a shore up the defensive line pick for them. Or I think maybe they could trade out if they get a good enough offer. But I think that would have already happened. Why? Because of the capital involved. What it would
yeah,
have cost to go from anywhere to the third pick to get Arizona out of their seat. I think that already needed to happen because, again, this is a logistical thing. This is like a
yeah,
thing you have to plan well in advance for. Like, here's a train of thought that I can get behind. Carolina, when they traded up for the one pick, they knew who they were going to take. They
yeah,
already done
yeah.
all
They
their
knew it was
homework.
kind of yeah.
They,
It
in my
was
opinion, if you think about what was going on in the football world leading up to that trade, in my opinion, Stroud versus Georgia is what spurned that pick, that trade.
yeah,
If you go back and you watch that game and you have the assets available to go get the number one overall pick and pick your guy, what football player and in what game did you go, oh, he's the man?
yeah.
That
He's the
guy
guy.
right there is
Like
the man.
he's
It was
him.
CJ
Yeah,
Stroud against
Stroud.
Georgia.
Yeah, it was
So
clear as
in
day.
my brain, it's like if we all saw it, Carolina moves up to the one, and you're like, oh, they're taking CJ Stroud. That's a done deal.
Yeah, and
Now
and you
they're
remember like You remember on
Go ahead.
Strauss Pro Day where Josh McCown and Frank Reich and everyone involved in the Panthers organization were like super close to the guy. That, in my opinion, was not a smokescreen. Like that was legit, interest in saying, "Hey, you're our guy. Like
Right.
we are going with you. We have the number one overall pick. We are going with you." So I think you could pretty much pencil in. I think CJ Stroud's going to the Panthers.
Mhm.
Because of
You
that,
could
I
sell
don't
that to me
think.
all day long and I'll buy it. I'll read every article about CJ Stroud and his long tenured career. Um, you know, with looking at Cam Newton, right, and saying like,
Yeah,
look at what a great quarterback this organization's had. Like I'm coming in and filling in his footsteps, right?
yeah, and
Um,
like
but
like you said, the game against Georgia, it's just impossible to ignore. Going up against the defense comprised of all
probably the best
five-star
defense
prospects.
ever.
Yeah, the best defense ever in college football. And there was one particular play, against where Jalen Carter, who is supposed to be like the one of the top defensive linemen on the
Yeah.
board, he just sheds the block in like a second. He's in the face of CJ Stroud, who like shows such a great poise in the pocket and darts to his right and throws a fucking dart on the play. And you're like, okay, that's the play where you're like, he's going to be a number one overall pick, no doubt. And
Mhm.
he put up like what a ridiculous stat sheet. What was it, like 5 touchdowns, almost 400 yards passing?
Mhm.
And you watch the game, it's just
It's
like
CJ Stroud versus the world
yeah,
is what it looked like.
surgically
Obviously,
destroying that defense.
we'll talk about next year. We'll talk about Marvin Harrison Jr. as being possibly the greatest wide receiver prospect I've ever watched
Yeah,
on film, and a kid isn't
yeah,
even draft eligible. So that we get him for a whole nother year. But it felt like when you watch CJ Stroud v Georgia, that's what it felt like. It literally felt like no one else mattered on that field, but could Ohio State's quarterback move the ball and score touchdowns against that Georgia defense. Now, not at the rate that Georgia could score, because Georgia's pretty much automatic. Um,
yeah,
so I say all that to say, okay. So here's the thing I can say with really confident. When you watch CJ Stroud play against Georgia, you're like, that's the number one overall pick. When you look at Bryce Young's tape, he has to be the second quarterback off the board. Just look at all that tape. Look at all that winning. Look at all that moxie. He is definitely probably the second person off the board. I'd argue that's the second pick to Houston. There's rumors out there. I would not be listening to a rumor that says that the Houston Texans are going to go with Davis Mills. I don't believe that. I think you have to pick one of these quarterback prospects. And I think if you watch enough film, you have to say, like, well, Bryce Young, if not the first pick, is like the second quarterback off the board here. And I'm the Anthony Richardson fan, right? I'm the guy that like that's the
yeah,
guy I want ultimately. And again, I'm not when I'm telling you what I think someone else is going to do, this is not what I want them to do. Like if we land Bryce Young, that's a win for me. You realize that because I was thinking, oh, we'll just have the greatest athletic prospect at quarterback that has ever existed ever, a 10.0 on the RAS, by the way, in Anthony Richardson. And you have a general manager that literally drafts every other guy based on his RAS score. So
yeah,
that's that now, which became like a probability, right? It's probable that he'll be available at 4. You might get stuck with the third quarterback in this class at that pick. He might be the guy.
hmm,
That went from like probable. That's now the fallback. Bryce Young might be available because again, I'm saying like, well, if Houston either doesn't take a quarterback, they could very well again there could be a tackle and a defensive player picked before the second quarterback is
yeah,
picked. So I just want everyone to think about this because I don't hear this much. I hear like this team doesn't like this guy anymore. They like this guy, and it's like all that is smoke screens. None of that has any validity to it at all. But like the hard reality is like I'm pretty sure the first pick is a quarterback. I'm unsure about what Houston or Arizona are doing. One, I don't work for any of them people. I don't like pay
yeah,
super close attention to what those organizations are like. So I don't know what their proclivities are. But I have to think if they were going to do something that threatened the immediate to medium future, the Colts have traded up by now.
yeah,
They'd have taken care of that problem, put them. But I think when you look at like organizations that you expect to not have it wired tight. I think that Houston is in a prime candidate to pick a defensive player, like we said. Like that's just something that they would do. That's a Houston thing to do. Now, Arizona,
Yeah,
I
for
can't really
sure.
speak on that. A lot of people have talked about like Arizona being comfortable trading out. Again, I believe that's something that should have already taken
Yeah.
place. I think the values that the sort of what you would have to give up in order to move up to that spot from a few spots are behind us
Yeah.
and including
And
us. It's like
it's
it's
probably,
such a significant investment. Needed to already happen if it was going to happen. And then also,
yeah,
I feel like we should talk about Lamar Jackson as well. Like,
yeah.
obviously, Jane Stike has shut the door on that, and I'm happy that that happened for us, so we could stop going in circles about Lamar Jackson. We don't have to do that anymore. Jane Stike has said, and I quote, "We are focused on the draft and the people in this locker room, and that means we're no longer looking at requiring people from other people's teams going into
Yeah.
this draft." So we can stop talking about Lamar Jackson as a possible starter for the Colts. Although I'm telling you, and it'll never happen now, but the storyline, we stole the franchise from you, and then we stole your
Now we
franchise
stole your
quarterback. Like
franchise
that,
quarterback. That would be
that,
sick.
that hatred that you would have had coming out of Baltimore, you could have smelt
Yeah,
it.
that would be
You know what I
sick.
mean? So
But
fortunately for everyone involved, that did not happen. The Colts did not steal your franchise quarterback after stealing your franchise. So
yeah,
I want to get
and
that.
I think, yeah, if you ask me, if I had to put money on it, I would say that Lamar is staying with the Ravens. I'm saying that the Ravens
Mhm.
played, they played an awful situation, and I believe they handled it really well
Yeah.
for the franchise. Like for the sake of their franchise, they handled it really well
Yeah.
because
They came out and said we love him and we want him to be our
yeah,
guy and
yeah,
like if he
they
can
just
get
let
a
it
better
all.
offer, like go be that guy somewhere
Yeah,
else.
they
But
let it all play out, and I think it worked wonders for them. They handled the situation like exactly how you expect a class franchise like them to do so,
hmm,
because they are a well-run franchise. Like they
hmm,
aren't a joke.
yep.
Like the Washington, like, side note, if
Hmm.
it was confirmed,
Gotta
I
talk
believe
about
that
that too.
Jeff
Yeah, we
Jeff
gotta talk about that.
Bezos is now an NFL owner. Like what?
No. He's not part of the ownership group. The ownership group's the owners of the 76ers.
Oh,
Yeah,
I
yeah, it's
thought it was,
actually a good
yeah,
thing. So we could talk about
yeah,
positively. The Washington Commanders are no longer run by
owned
Dan
by Snyder.
Snyder.
Yeah, yeah,
So
that's a
that immediately, for the record, in my humble opinion, that instantly made the NFL more valuable
yeah, a better place.
because I have been a NFL football fan my entire life. Washington, the goddamn Redskins, like they have a fan base. Just like when you think about like Cleveland's been terrible forever, but their fan base is intense, right? That's how Washington is. Like their fan base, they've had a terrible ownership group. That stadium has been a nightmare just to be
Yeah,
in. So I'm happy today for football fans, for NFL fans, for Washington fans, man. Like there I even saw the smile on RG3's face when they asked him like how does it feel now knowing the Redskins are under new ownership and like this, yeah, the broadest smile you've
yeah,
ever seen.
you could see it felt great.
Yeah, and so it's a happy day for the NFL. Not obviously not a lot of Colts news, right? Obviously, I did see McKenzie, the new scat back the Colts traded for.
Yeah, the
I
wide
did see
receiver.
him post, "You better be a cross country runner." And so if you know anything about football, you know that means they're gonna be hucking that motherfucker around. Um, so I'm excited as hell. Obviously, you know when you close some doors, right? When you say stuff like, "Hey, we're focused on the draft and players in the building," closes the door on this big looming question that would I think it makes it a lot easier to cheer for your team because you know the direction you're headed. You know that this is very likely a rookie quarterback backing up Gardner Minshew because it it doesn't feel like they're going to trade up. There's again, I've said there's a lot of assets involved with trading up from any position, and I think you needed it a couple weeks. Yeah, you needed like a couple
Yeah,
weeks to kind of iron out what you're going to do in the draft if you're going to move the assets to trade up. So I don't think the Colts are trading up. I don't think that even happens on draft day, right? And again, we don't know what's going to happen, but again, everybody else is putting out all this other shit, and it's like it's too late in the game. Like y'all watch
Yeah,
the draft every year, you know that the big moves are made very early, and then it's stagnant towards the end of this period, right, leading up to the draft. I'm glad that we're sitting at about 2 weeks out because obviously things could change. There could be some movement, but I think it's going to be more smoke, right? I think that you're going to see more. We were kind of joking about our Discord chat about how it's like, Houston's picking Bryce Young, Houston's picking CJ Stroud if he's left over. No shit.
yeah.
Like
Houston's
people
going
saying
for
like
Will
the
Anderson.
Raiders are trading up to the third pick to take uh Anthony Richardson. And it's like, okay, so he'll be out of the league in 4 years. Like, you know what I mean? Like all these things, and none of these things are going to happen. There's too much at stake for that to move to be made this close to the draft, I think. And that only becomes truer every day that it doesn't happen. Right. So anyone out there that listens to us is like, this guy's full of shit, right? Yeah, you realize every day that somebody didn't trade into the third pick, I become more correct. You realize that.
Yeah,
Leading all the way up to the draft. You get to the night before the draft and there ain't been a move made, and it's like, man, he was right all along. Yeah, man, think about it. You are probably gonna have to package this year's first round pick and then another important pick. And you're going to have
yeah,
to evaluate that. And if I was an NFL GM or head coach, even having to evaluate that, I needed that done already because I got to evaluate my 46 or my 53 or my 60 or whatever the hell they're at 95 now. Who cares?
yeah,
Um, but yeah, obviously a lot of people have messaged me and asked like, why don't we discuss smaller transactions like with the Colts signing like an offensive lineman O'Connell. There was like some other guys, like it's not that relevant. These are camp bodies. These are guys that we don't even
yeah.
expect to make the
They're not even
roster.
gonna make like you could. It's a waste of time. And, like just not worth. There are more important subjects to discuss than can bodies.
Yeah. There are other podcasts that will dive deep on people who like got a
Yeah,
phone call randomly 3 years after they stopped playing football last and asked to play left tackle for the Colts. I think that happened a few years ago. But yeah, obviously, like I've said, like it's good as you get closer to the draft to kind of nail down some details. Um, Again, like I've said all along, Chris Ballard said I'm comfortable at 4. And and
hmm,
and I've felt for a while, it depends who's in front of me, but like if it's Jacksonville or Houston, oh, they're gonna fuck that up. Like you could pick in front of me, that one doesn't even count. Because it doesn't even matter if you get the right player, you're gonna fuck it up. He's gone. He's gonna be there for 3 years. Who cares, right? But and the Arizona would be about the only team where I'm like, I just think that they could go offense or defensive line there. Like I think
yeah,
there's a couple ways you could go there. Obviously, I don't think Arizona's trading out or trading for a quarterback. Again, I think these picks are very valuable, and I don't think it's worth moving. So I don't think I was on team trade back forever. Now I'm like,
yeah,
no, you really need that asset, right?
yeah,
And I think Arizona and Houston and Carolina obviously needed the asset. They traded a lot to go up and get who I expect to be CJ Stroud. But that's about the only thing I'm willing to say that I kind of think I have a beat on, right?
yeah, yeah.
That's the first
Anything
pick.
else is
I everything
it's
else, it's like, dude, people are crazy. That it they have a minute and a half. They have a minute and a half. And one of them teams in front of the Colts is Houston, who is gonna fumble on the way up there, right? Um, that's the way I think about it, is like I'm hearing that they're not even picking a quarterback at 3. They're thinking about 2. They're not picking a quarterback at 2. They're waiting till the 12th, and then they're even trying to
yeah,
trade up from the 12th. And it's just like, see, all those fuck games that Houston's trying to play here. That means that they don't know what they're doing with their pick yet. And again, I think the Colts have known from moment one, we're taking a quarterback. We're just gonna again, like I said, Houston doesn't really count for me. So it's like only 2 people are picking ahead of me. Really, only 2 people. One of them I don't have to worry about. They're in our division. They're gonna mess that pick up. Not even worried about that. Now,
yeah,
if Houston, for the record, if Houston drafts Anthony Richardson, I'll be sour because
yeah.
I wanted
Definitely.
I wanted 244 pounds at quarterback running a 4.4, not 200 pounds. So to throw that out there. They're like, yes, I'm saying like
Yeah.
Bryce Young would kind
And
of be a consolation prize if Anthony Richardson goes to Houston because I think he can beat Davis Mills out. That's all I'm saying. And and I want to make sure I speak at length about athletic quarterbacks and their rise. A lot of people, even colleagues of ours, have spoke at length about how being an athlete and playing quarterback, those things do not matter in the NFL. Like we have a guy who does like data for us. But whenever these things come up, I'm always the first person to say, like, does your data consider that for a large quantity, a large percentage of the NFL's history that they didn't have black quarterbacks? And then furthermore, when we look at the speed of the NFL and the speed
yeah,
specifically of
the
edge
way the game is
rushers,
evolving. Yeah.
I think that with the rise of the black quarterback, you are going to see an impetus put on athletic ability, the ability to stretch the play and keep it alive when the pass block breaks down, when the line
Yeah.
breaks down. And if you look at the Colts haven't had 7 starting quarterbacks in the last 5 years. What would you say their problem was? None of them could extend a play and throw on
Yeah.
the run. Here's the other
Just
thing.
Andrew.
Yeah, just Andrew Luck, right? Now, when you think about drafting a quarterback, and keep this in mind too, as we're pontificating about this, none of these quarterbacks are supposed to be world beaters. So let's just like get that out there. There was no God arm. There was no like keen sense, right? Like the kid from USC, Caleb Williams, for next year too.
Yeah.
He's got the Patrick Mahomes written all over him, right? But like they didn't really have this. These guys are CJ Stroud is more like a clean mechanical quarterback that's going to be a good starter in the NFL and a top half quarterback, right? But when we think about guys like Anthony Richardson, here's the way I think about it. In his development as a quarterback, he will still be the best athlete on the field. And when you're the best athlete on the field and you're developing and getting better and better and better, and you get hurt and shit, he comes back and he's still the best quarterback on the field or best athlete on the field. And when
Yeah.
he's the best athlete on the field and even though he's been injured and he's come back off a knee injury and he's still the best athlete on the field and the play breaks down, he gets out of the pocket cleanly and he can get his shoulders square because he's an athlete. And like on sprint outs, I had this demonstration as a coach in practice. I had 2 players who wanted to play quarterback. One of them was a former tight end, and one of them was a wide receiver. And I said, you know how we're going to figure out who's the number 1 quarterback? Who looks better and gets out faster on a sprint out or roll out. And guess what? The better athlete was able to get clear of the blitzer
Yeah.
and give himself space to get a ball off. And when you have a guy that's like 2/10 or 4/10 slower, there are guys in this class going to get drafted in the first 2 rounds and play quarterback that ran a 4.840. And you have an Anthony Richardson that is 244 pounds. That means he
Yeah.
bounces off people that runs a 4.4. And you're telling me there's no correlation between being an athlete and being successful in the NFL at the quarterback position. Well, when he has a 10.0 raw athletic score and he's the fastest player on the field,
Yeah.
just watch.
Yeah.
This isn't Malik Willis. This isn't anyone that you've seen in the NFL so far. This isn't Lamar Jackson. This isn't even him. I'm not even saying that. I'm saying that you could put him out on the field and it's the absolute worst that team has ever looked, and he's going to carry it. That's what kind of athlete that is, where he's going to move the ball no matter what. I promise. In the NFL level, when the play breaks down even faster and he runs a 4.4, he's getting 19 yards. And he's going to
Yeah.
be out of
At the
bounds,
minimum.
standing on
Yeah.
the opponent's sideline like, whoo. Oh, and he's not Lamar Jackson. I mean, he's not going around you. He's going through you. So when you try to play, let's hit your quarterback a little bit, he wants that. That's what he wants. That's what I want at quarterback. Why? Because every year for the last 6 years, they hit our quarterback and he goes to the sideline and he's done.
Yeah.
He's paper mache. That's why I want an athlete, because when he gets hurt and breaks his leg for the first time, he goes from a 4.4 to a
Yeah.
4.5. Right? Where you draft a guy that runs a 4.840, now he's a 5.0 guy. Right? And you're like, he is not going to last. His career is going to end, right? Like, even think about Joe Burrow and look at his athletic development post knee injury. He's in his best track shape because he found out early on, first year in his career, oh, I'm not fast enough out of the hole when the play breaks
Yeah.
down. And now when you watch him, like, he's real fast out of the hole, shoulders around quick, balls out quick. And you're like, how do you get there? You either bring it, Anthony Richardson, bringing that level of
Yeah.
athleticism, or you have to go get it. And then you have to maintain that as long as you can, because I think the drop back passing era is over. I think it's over. I
Yeah.
think that
Yeah, I agree.
a lot of people are saying guys like Hendon Hooker are not good at picks in the NFL. And I disagree, because I think that the drop back passing era is over. I think that a 3-step drop is too long. I think you need to be ready to throw as soon as the ball touches your hands, because these people that are coming from the outside in are freaks and they don't like you. And your tackles can't block them. And that's any football I watch on television. Like, watch the XFL, watch the pass rush. They have no time to throw, none. If the ball's not out, they have to be out of the pocket because there's 2 people there,
Yeah.
and those guys aren't good enough to play in the NFL, right? And you watch some of these guys play, and you're just like, the problem is that we're the football coaches, the football you see on TV. It's like they're thinking 20 years ago. The teams that are making it now into the playoffs and making deep runs into playoffs have an athlete at quarterback, an above average athlete at quarterback, right? And like,
Yeah.
the farther we get into this, like, it's going to keep getting more saturated with athletes at the top, because that ability, and I'm not even saying like relying on the quarterback to run, but just having the ability to, oh, they had it covered, but the quarterback has a lane to run. You've got a willing runner, somebody that's like, oh, I'll go get those yards, slide, keep myself clean, here's the ball. Where guys that aren't as good at athletes can't slide. So they're going to get hit and hurt. And that to me is why I want the 10.0 raw athlete. I want
Yeah.
somebody that like has some athletic sense, right? I'm about to get ear hold. I need to duck my head and spin out of this, right? Have some semblance of like, have been there, done this, right? Because that's what I felt like I've been watching the last couple of years, is Matt Ryan, Carson Wentz, that lost that sense of danger, right? Where like something bad's about to happen if I don't just get rid of this rock, right? And I think if you put an athlete back there, that either the rock's getting out of their hand or they're gonna make a play with their feet. And I'm for both of those things, because we've had the trash, right? We've
Yeah.
had it where it didn't look good. It looked forced, or we couldn't even get the playoff. Couldn't get the ball out of the quarterback's hand. And that was last year. That was just this past year. So yeah, yes, people lose their jobs. You draft their quarterback to replace that, right? Like, hopefully Gardner Minshew, for the record, brings it and challenges
Yeah.
this, whoever this person is,
Yeah.
and helps
Whoever. Yeah.
them, right? Because I think that he's a good enough spot starter, but if he goes longer than 4 games, like, did you miss on the pick?
Yeah.
Like, I think he starts your season off for you as probably your starter, because he's just got a lot more
Yeah. He
experience than
starts
him.
week 1.
But if he gets more than about 3-4 starts, it's like real questionable. Like, where we are
Yeah.
in the development of this rookie quarterback, that we're not comfortable with him starting over Gardner Minshew, right? And that's one of the reasons I want Anthony Richardson and not Bryce Young, because I think Anthony Richardson's got Gardner Minshew's number all day. I don't know about Bryce Young out dueling Gardner Minshew, because they're like the same to me, right? They
Yeah.
haven't.
They
One of
are
them hadn't
similar.
played a
Yeah.
lick in the NFL, but the other one's like an average starter, right? Well, you're all average starters till you prove otherwise. That's why you got getting picked in the first round high in the draft, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm super excited, especially like I've said, when things start to close off and it's like that's not going to happen. Like, oh, okay, cool. Like, Colts still have like 9 picks in the draft. Absolutely no reason in the world to make any moves.
Yeah.
Not enough time left before the actual draft. And then we've decided this is a Colts and Pacers podcast, right? So with our last few minutes, the Pacers season's over. We were just talking about how
Yeah.
you have had uh friends over to watch these play-in games in the NBA and how great they've been to add a
Yeah,
level
just
of
yeah.
intrigue to the NBA playoff machine. Obviously we were talking about before this podcast how the NBA's got the better playoff scheme.
Yeah.
Obviously, because
It's
in the NFL
just
you can't play series because people would
yeah, you
die.
can't play like
No back to
best
backs.
of
Can't even
yeah.
get them to play
And it's
4 days. So
just so like so much fun watching like basically all the playing games because it's winning in or losing you're potentially out.
yeah,
And it just it gets like I think any fan would agree that the playoff is the best time to be an NBA fan. Like
yeah,
it's the
because
most competitive those
everybody's
games are,
here.
yeah. And
A
it's
lot of the complaint late in the NBA season
we're
was that. Go ahead.
yeah, yeah, like you were saying, like everybody's in because you're not resting in the playoff because the
Mm-mm.
loss means you're probably out.
Yep.
So I believe that Adam Silver made a great decision because, and we were talking about this with my friends. It also helps with the problems of tanking because if you're an 11 seed, a 10 seed, you're like, okay, I'm not tanking because there is a chance of making the playoffs.
Right.
So there is less 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 incentives of tanking when you're like, hey, I could realistically make the play. The Pacers, they were 30 and 40 with 12 games to play, and they had a shot of making it. Like
Right.
they were in it, like right until the end, right
Yeah.
until the last 5 to 6 games, they were in it.
Yep. And
And it's
and let's talk about this. Pacers were dumb young, made a move, trade away assets, got asset in Halliburton, and he got hurt. And the thing about the Pacers when he was playing is they were winning, and
yeah,
when he didn't
and they
play,
were
they didn't
winning a
win,
lot.
and they were winning a lot more than they were losing when he was playing. Um, so I'm excited for the Pacers because you look year to year, they won 10 more games this past season than they did last year. And I don't think anybody like thought that was going to happen. I think
Yeah,
people probably thought there was going to be more sameness. They're going to be terrible because they don't have anybody but two bigs. And then they got rid of one, and then you know what I mean? They made a move. They got Buddy Hield. Um,
yeah,
and I think obviously a lot of those players are going to go away, right? But they have a lot of very young players that
yeah.
would get
They're
in
gonna stay,
significant
and
minutes, and that is going to help a team get over you know, the 38, 40 win mark, which is kind of where you need to be. You
yeah,
need a little over
yeah,
500, and we're in the dance. And like we were also saying before the podcast, like I think we're in a frame of time athletically where you have a lot of people complaining about guys resting and sitting games in the regular season. I'd
yeah.
argue as a fan, it feels like there's a lot of meaningless basketball played in the last like month of the season, and that I would rather watch a 5 game series play in than
Other
watch.
than
Yeah,
some meaningless games.
yeah, like the last 3 or 4 games just felt like they're just out there to get a paycheck. You know what I mean? It didn't feel like the game mattered. And I get it. I'm kind of putting words in other people's mouth. I'm saying the game didn't matter. Of course they matter. They all matter. They're all worth a hundred
Yeah,
thousand
but
dollars or more for these people.
yeah,
But
you get the feeling.
yeah, and I want if they want to play more meaningful but games and they're willing to rest to be available in more meaningful games, I want more meaningful contests, right? Um, and yeah, the West looks loaded. A lot of those, like you were talking about, a lot of those matchups look awesome.
Yeah.
And then obviously as a Pacers fan, kind of a little down on the East, mostly just because I thought the Pacers had all these people's numbers. You know what I mean? So, um, but yeah, I think it's second most wonderful time of the year for me anyway.
Yeah.
Maybe third. The NCAA
Yeah, third
basketball is pretty
when you're
fun. Um,
yeah,
and,
October is nice.
well,
Like for a sports fan.
oh yeah,
You
because you
you
got
basically
hockey,
have everything.
baseball, football started, basketball started. Yeah,
Yeah.
everything's a full swing. I get it. Yeah, I was just thinking like really it's like the NFL college football season and then like the NCAA basketball NBA playoffs time frame. Like that's the best time for me. You know, I'm not really a
Yeah,
baseball fan, you know what I mean? So, but yeah, obviously it can't really talk much at length. It's not like the Pacers made a bunch of moves or fired
yeah,
anybody or had
nothing.
any
Yeah,
reason to do that.
nothing.
So just kind of like slinking into their off season. They do have, I think, like 3 picks in the first couple of rounds of the draft or something.
Yeah,
Like the 3 first round draft
four
picks or something like
because
that.
the it's
Oh, through it was 3 and 1.
first round
Yeah, from someone
picks,
else.
and then it's the 31
Hmm.
because of the the, the Spurs beat the Mavericks on the final game. Like if the Spurs had lost, we wouldn't get the pick. I never understood the logistic of that, but
Hmm.
basically we have the potential, the what is it like the seventh, eighth pick in the first round. Then it's the 24 and the 27, I believe. I'm not entirely sure,
Yeah,
but
something like that.
it's along the line of that. And then
Hmm.
the 31. And
Yeah,
if I'm I saw some,
it means the
at least,
Pacers just keep getting younger.
yeah, I saw some rumors about, perhaps trading those, 24, 27, perhaps getting a guy like Pascal Siakam or OG Anunoby from the Raptors. I'm like, hey, that makes perfect sense. I would like that for the team, and I think that either
Yeah, I mean, if they
Siakam or
lose in the
Anunoby,
playoffs, yeah, they,
yeah, they just it makes sense. You're like, okay, I could see this happening. Pacers, perhaps if they manage to keep the core, they don't need any more, role players. They have that with TJ McConnell or Andrew Nemhard, Buddy
hmm
Hield,
yeah,
Isaiah Jackson, Jalen Smith also. Like you don't
I
need
love James.
more role players.
Hmm.
You need perhaps what you need is forwards. You need athletic guys. You need a power forward and you need a small forward. Those are the type of players you need, in my opinion.
Yeah, you need somebody you need somebody that can guard their shooter and somebody that can guard their athletic guys because like
Yeah,
that was one thing about Pacers games. I just didn't feel like they played very tough defense, right? And I get it. They're a young team. They're not expected to win. Most of these guys are under 25 and got a million miles left on the tires. You know what I mean? And then you have
yeah,
um, um, Miles Turner gets re-signed to a big contract in a
yeah,
down year. He's not out there trying to get hurt, and that's kind of how I felt the Pacers played all year, is they were just playing not to get hurt. And again, I don't have a problem with this when you're young and not challenging for a championship or trying to make a big playoff push. They weren't doing that. It almost felt like they shut Halliburton down. Like
yeah. Way
this
too.
is
Yeah,
why we're winning. We're not gonna make any noise in the playoffs. We're not deep enough. And then, like I said, now they've got like 3, 4 picks in this upcoming draft. Like they just get to get deeper and put more pressure by having more draft picks, by having more draft quality players to bring into your organization. So I like the direction the Pacers are headed. Obviously they haven't made any moves, so it's like what else? What other information is there? And yeah, I'm really looking forward to the playoffs. I guess technically they
yeah.
start tomorrow. But
But yeah, it's almost like yeah,
I stayed up to watch the games. You know, I don't normally stay up late. I'm a get in bed kind of guy, but like I
it's
stayed up to
fun to
watch
watch.
the Lakers win. So LeBron in the playoffs in year 20. It's
Yeah,
crazy.
just
It's crazy to think about. Like Michael Jordan had a great 15-year career, right? Kind of at
yeah,
the end of 15
yeah.
years, he kind of left and goes to Washington. LeBron's had like a incredible
20.
20-year career, like a otherworldly 20-year
Yeah,
career.
that's
Like
impressive.
if he
Yeah.
gets ring 6 playing at this high a level through 20 years, then he might
What is
be.
it? Isn't he at 4 right now? Like this year would
Oh,
be
he is at
ring.
4.
Yeah,
See,
he's
I
at
mean
4.
he's not getting 6. It's just not. There's not enough assets.
Yeah, nah. Yeah, not
He
6.
costs too much money.
If he
Him and
does get
AD cost too much money. They
yeah,
don't
if
play
he
enough
does
games.
get the 5 though. If he does get to 5
He
this
gets to
year.
5, he can be the 2. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just I mean it's just I think the guy that has 2 3-peats and 9 all defensive first teams gets to be the best. Sorry. Because now, if you think about now, even in order to play in the NBA, you got to be able to play defense, right? Like that's like the bottom of the barrel. You got to have the gas to play defense. And then of course you have to be able to score, but in order to even get on the floor, you got to play defense. That's what you hear from these people on TV all day, right?
Yeah.
So, yep. Now if you think about it, defense is all effort, right? So that's all a conditioning thing. That's why I got into coaching. It's like if you can just
having
tell
the
everyone
energy.
it's all conditioning and weightlifting. Like if you could just commit yourself to that labor of love, that I'm just gonna love lifting weights and conditioning, and all of the other shit doesn't matter.
Yeah, it
Trust
come
me.
easy.
Because if you're not out of gas and the other guy's out of gas, guess who's forgetting shit? The guy that's out of gas. That's why I want the athlete at quarterback. Because when it's hot outside and it's the fourth quarter and their uniforms are too dark and guys stop sweating and they're literally hyperventilating in their helmets and they're getting heat injuries, right? I want to be able to give that guy a play call and him calmly remember that and go to the line of scrimmage and run that play instead of being out of shape because he's not that good of an athlete anyway. So he doesn't really like to condition or lift weights. Who does that sound like? Bryce Young, right? So
yeah,
he gets injured and he goes from running a 4.8 to running a 5.0. And then again, I'm sitting here going like, see, when I see Bryce Young, I'm like, he's not a good enough athlete to be that small. So it's not like I'm saying he's too small to play. I'm saying, no, I needed him to like to lift weights at 6 foot, 200 pounds. I needed him to be like a kind of scrawny, like kind of, you know what I mean? A scrapper. And he's not. And the problem with that is that he's gonna get cold cocked in the NFL. These boys don't play. And there's plenty of NFL players out there that'll tell you they're chomping at the bit to put a lick on Bryce Young. Like, what are we talking about, little guy? Right? It's the same, they said the same thing about Murray, right? Arizona's quarterback. He's so small, I can't wait to hit him. Like, are you kidding me? You put that little thing out there? Right? That's how I feel people think about Bryce Young. Not to jump back into the draft, but yeah, this has been episode 6. We're calling it kind of our pre-draft.
Pre-draft.
Got a couple weeks left to the draft. I'd kind of thought about doing like some kind of stream during the first round of the NFL draft because we got 3 or 4 guys from Stampede Blue going to be at the draft. I thought maybe if they call us from the draft, that would be incredible. And I thought it'd be great for us to have like a video of that. I know you said you had plans, so I'm just kind of tossing that idea around. Like if you watch the end of this podcast and you hear me say like I was kind of thinking about doing like a live YouTube stream during the first round of the NFL draft, see if you pick up on that at all. But yeah, this has been season 2, episode 6, the pre-draft episode.
Yeah, pre-draft episode
of the Coltist. If you like what we're putting out, hey, like the video, subscribe, it helps and stuff. And have a great rest of your week. Have a great weekend. Stay safe out there. You good?
Yeah, good.